In semi-automatic washing machine, there's a symptom that the pulsator is not rotating or it rotates one side, rotate only at no load condition. We are going to cover the feedback from the customers, questions to be asked from the customers, dot matrix about the symptoms, possibility type of failures, electrical, electronics, mechanical, usage in surrounding conditions, steps for the diagnosis, what are the diagnosis process, and the repairing process for those defects. The customer feedback that the pulsator is not rotating, pulsator rotates only on one side, pulsators rotates only when there is no load. So the questions which is asked to the customers related to the particular symptoms, does the pulsator rotate clockwise and anti-clockwise to understand if the motor is working or not? Do you hear the motor's noise while operations? It is to understand if the motor or belt or capacitor is faulty. Is there any noise while pulsator is rotating? To understand if any pulsator rubbing or foreign material. Was there any repair done before this complaint? To understand if there is any workmanship issues. Normally, how many wash cycle do you run? It is to understand the customer's usage pattern. The dot matrix is related to the particular defect, like main cord faulty, loose open connections or wrong wiring, wash timer defective, selector switch defective, wash motor, voltage or capacitors problem or jam, belt tension or belt tone, pulsator defective, mechanical assembly faulty, and education to the customer. The possibility of the failures: main cord faulty, wrong wiring, capacitor faulty, wash timer faulty, and selector switch faulty is an electrical type of defect. Wash motor jam, belt tension loose or wears and tears, mechanical assembly faulty, pulsator defective is a mechanical type of defect. Cloth overload in wash tub is a usage in some conditions, and voltage conditions, it is an environmental factor. Some of the parameters to be checked: in case of voltage condition, we have to ensure that the voltage conditions are proper. I have to check the main cord and inform customer to get it repaired. Then we check the main cord. We have to check the main cord and the line fuse. In case there's a problem, we have to replace the main cord. Then we check for loose or open wiring. In case of any loose, open or wrong connections, we have to make a proper connection. Then we check the wash timer, check for the wash timer operations, check, and if it is not okay, we have to replace the wash timer. Then check for the selector switch. If the selector switch is not properly working, we have to replace it. And then check the belt tension. We have to check that belt is either loose or wear and tear. We have to refit it or replace the belt. Then we go for the mechanical assembly. Check the mechanical assembly operations. In case there's a problem, we have to replace it. After that, we have to work for pulsator. Check the pulsator rubbing. If in case there is any rubbing, we have to adjust or replace the pulsator. Then check the check the motor capacitor. Check the capacitance. If the capacitor is weak, we have to replace the capacitor. Then you check the wash motor. Check the wash motor working. In case it is not working properly, we have to replace it. Then we check the cloth overloading. We have to check the cloth overloading. In case the customer is overloading the cloth, we have to educate customer about the cloth loading capacity. The required tools and equipments: plier, key, screwdriver, digital clamp. The defects related to main cord: we have to check any cut or damage in the power cord. We have to check the internal wire damage in the cord or a pin top. check the line fuse in the power cord. We have to visually inspect the power cord for any breakage, insulation open, pinching, rodent bite, burn marks. If any breakage found, we have to replace the power cord. We have to visually inspect the power cord clips for loose connections with the component terminals, rusting, burn marks, or breakage of the wires from the clips. If any of these problems found, replace the clip or the power cord. We have to check the power cord by continuity method. There's a small video for it.
इस वीडियो
Then for loose connections, we have to check for any loose connection or open connection, wire damage or terminal rusting. Check for the incorrect wiring connections. If any loose connections observed, we have to correct it. If any open connections, terminals rusting observed, we have to clean the terminals and reconnect the connections and replace the wires and harness. If any wire or damage observed, we have to replace the wire harness. If any incorrect wiring connections observed, we have to correct. In case of wash timer defect, we have to check if the wash timer is sticky or stuck, if the wash timer is open or open circuit, if the check if the wash timer is off. To check the wash timer, we have to check the continuity between the gray wire and the brown wire. If there is no continuity, we have to replace the timer. We have to check the continuity between pink and gray at the end of the wash cycle. If no continuity, we have to replace the timer. We have to check the continuity between green and yellow wire and green and gray wires for normal cycle. You will get continuity alternatively. If no continuity, we have to replace the timer. Similarly, check the continuity between brown, yellow wires and brown and gray wires for gentle cycle. You will get continuity alternatively. If no continuity, we have to replace the timer. Check for any burn marks inside the timer. If found, we have to replace the timer. Check for any gear breaks inside the timer. If there is a gear break, we have to replace the timer. If the timer is stuck and not rotating, by rotating the knob, then change the. In case of selector switch defect, we have to check for the selector switch is broken. We have to check whether it is an open circuit or it is a short circuit. To check the continuity in the terminal 1 and 3 when the gentle mode is selected, and check the continuity between 1 and 2 when the normal mode is selected. If no continuity, then we have to change the selector switch. Physically check if the switch is broken or not working. If so, we have to replace the wash motor problem. In that case, we have to check the voltage and capacitor. We have to check the voltage condition. If it's not okay, check the capacitor weak or faulty. We have to check the wash motor faulty. We have to check the voltage at the electrical socket. Voltage between neutral and phase to be 230 volts. Voltage between phase and earth is 230 volts, and the voltage between neutral and earth should be 0 to 2 volts. Wash motor's operating voltage is 220 volt to 220 volts AC. The motor will not start at the lower voltage. We have to check the capacitor. First of all, we have to select the capacitor range on the meter. If on the capacitor the positive or negative lead is marked, attach the positive red lead from the meter to that and the negative black to the opposite. The meter should show the capacitance value of the capacitor within the tolerance limit. If the reading is out of the tolerance limit, the capacitor is faulty. Now we check the capacitor by using resistance method. This test will only show if the capacitor is completely dead or not. We have to set the meter to read in the high ohms range, somewhere about 10k and 1 mega ohms. We have to set the meter's lead to the corresponding lead on the capacitor, red to the positive and black to the negative if any. The meter should start at 0 and then moving slowly towards infinity. This means that the capacitor is in working condition. If the meter stays at 0, the capacitor is not charging through the battery of the meter, meaning it is faulty. Third method to check the capacitor is by voltage method. We have to charge the capacitor with 9 volt DC battery for few seconds. Read the voltage across the capacitor terminals. It should be near 9 volt DC first. The voltage will discharge rapidly and goes to 0 volt. This behavior shows the capacitor is good. Fourth method to check the capacitor is by continuity method. If the multimeter shows sign of continuity like beep and then it stop to L, the capacitor is good. If the capacitor does not show any sign of continuity, the capacitor is open. If the multimeter beeps continuously, the capacitor is short and need to replace. We test the motor by resistance method. If there is a change in the mentioned resistance, the motor is faulty. In that case, we have to replace the. Another method of testing the motor is by line test. If the motor does not rotate, we have to give a supply to the motor, and the motor does not rotate, the motor is faulty. We have to replace the motor. We can check the belt tension with the help of our hand, and another way is we have to look for any wear and tear in the good old thumb rule is we deflect the belt about ½ inch. Too little tension will generate heat and will cause belt to fail prematurely. Too much tensions can overload the mechanical assembly, may damage motor or bearing. If the belt tension is either loose or tight, adjust the belt for proper tension. If any wear and tears are visible on the belt, you have to replace the belt. Pulsator grooves failure. In that case, we have to check any damages in the pulsator grooves. If pulsator is not loose fitted, we have to check if the pulsator is rotating without load. If any damage to the pulsator grooves, we have to replace the pulsator. If pulsator is loosely fitted, we have to. In case of mechanical assembly problem of either of jam or damage, We have to disassemble the gearbox from the machine. Try to pull the shaft with the hand and rotate the pulley and check whether it is rotating freely or not. If the mechanical assembly is broken or jammed, we have to replace the mechanical. We have to educate the customer about the voltage and earthing requirements. We have to suggest the customer to use stabilizer if the voltage is high or low. We have to educate customer to use appropriate wash load while washing, that is, don't overload the machine. Educate customer about the precautions to be followed while loading clothes in the washing machine. Thank you.